Okay, so it is time for a Honkai Star Rail tier list. Now before we start, I will base this tier list completely off my own experience, the 200 hours that I put into the closed beta, and how much fun I had using the characters as a whole. I personally think what makes a great character is someone with a good and strong kit that is also fun to use and play. Fun being the main thing. I also like to look at these tier lists as a fun way to discuss characters in general, and honestly you shouldn't fully trust any tier list at this moment and take everything with a grain of salt, because these tier lists are currently all based on the final closed beta and things can always change for the release. Now before I start, I also want to mention that I added an S+ tier list for characters that have just that little edge above the other characters that are going to be put in S tier. So there is a small distinct difference not only in strength but also visually on the tier list that you are looking at. And with all that said, let us start ranking these characters. First up is our boy Arlen. I kinda like Arlen cause he's a really decent single target lightning DPS that I ended up using a lot in the beta for any fight that required lightning damage. Really good in general fights and overall boss fights. One big thing that I like when it comes to Arlen is that his skill doesn't consume any skill points, but instead he uses his own HP. Also, the lower his HP goes, the stronger he gets. Overall, like any character, the more you invest into him, the better he scales, but at the same time he needs to be babysitted with shields or small heals so he doesn't get completely deleted by bosses, because every time he uses a skill, he uses 15% of his max HP. Extremely fun to use in simulated universe, especially when you go destruction path. I'll put Arlen in A tier. Next up is Asta, incredible free-to-play support that you should definitely invest into. Completely evaporates any shield of any enemy that is weak to fire because of her multiple attacks that she has on her skill. Most people will say that she is a must-have because of her ultimate, because her ultimate gives speed buffs, but honestly she is a must-have because of how much attack buff she brings to the whole team. Early to mid-game when she has full stacks, she can give you up to 35% attack to everyone on the team including herself, and late game that thing can get pumped up to 60% attack on everyone, and to me those are insane numbers. Incredibly strong support, and she is also free to play. Don't be afraid to invest a lot into her. And with that, she is a certified A tier. Now, one of my favorite free-to-play characters is definitely going to be March 7th, and I'm going to instantly put her into S tier, and let me explain why. So first of all, she's a really strong tank that brings a lot of utility with her freezes, counterattacks every time someone attacks anyone that has her shields applied to them, and later on also provides one big thing, and that is dispels. Later on, when you unlock one of her main traces, she gets the ability to dispel. So every time she applies her shields to someone, she will also remove a debuff from that character. And removing debuffs is a really important thing to have, especially later on when you progress and push certain things or boss fights where having a dispeller is a really good thing. Overall, one of the strongest free-to-play characters for me personally. Okay, Bailu. Now, Bailu is like the only other healer we have on launch next to Natasha. It's not mandatory to have, but overall a good thing to have for your account early on, or until we get more healers into the game. She has good AoE healing that also increases characters' max HP, and she herself scales strong with max HP items, and all of her abilities scale well with max HP. I would personally put her into S tier. Bronya Brony, or as I like to call her, Lebronya James, needs to be an S+ tier. I think everyone is already familiar with her. She provides strong support in terms of damage and crit damage to the whole team, has an incredible strong technique which gives even more attack boost before the fight even starts, and it lasts for 2 turns. Her skill is probably one of the most busted things in the game when you compare it to the rest of the characters, where it gives advancement forward, so the character that gets targeted by the skill instantly goes next, also gives big damage buff, and also removes a debuff, so it's a 3-in-1 skill. She scales really strong with crit damage, and because of her traces, she has an inbuilt 100% crit chance, so you don't even need crit chance on her, you just need crit damage. So not only is she a strong support, but she can also become a good sub DPS. One big negative thing that I have about her is that she eats skill points like there is no tomorrow, and because of that, you will sometimes get into situations where where you are skill point starved. Her 5-star signature light cone fixes the problem a little bit, but that problem still persists. Overall, Bronya for now is a staple S+ tier character. Now, I think that Clara is one of the most undervalued characters for now. Well, at least she was in the beta. She is a strong bruiser that has the second highest base attack in the game, pairs and synergizes really well with March 7th, where the two of them make a really good counter duo team, and their kits overall work really well with each other. So Clara is more of a proactive character, where you need to set her up and be on the defensive, with all the counters she has. What I'm saying is that she has a completely different playstyle when compared to all other characters, where the other characters are more reactive and go more on the offense, and Clara is more defensive, with all her damage being in her counter attacks. She has really good damage reduction on both her talent and ultimates, and you will want her to be the target of every enemy so she can get the advantage of her hard hitting counters, as I already said. Her traces are also really good, where she gets a good passive 35% resistance to CC debuffs and has a chance to remove a debuff from her every time she is hit, and I value this pretty highly for endgame. I can go on and on about Clara, but to me she is a certified S tier character. Dan Heng is a really strong single target wind character that can also slow down enemies every time he crits. Really good to have because we get him for free, but also because there are no damage wind characters aside from Shampoo that is focused mainly on applying wind dots, and Bronya that is more focused on supporting so she doesn't attack that much. Overall, I would strongly recommend to invest into him because of how strong he is against elite and bosses in general. And I will put him for now into A tier. I value him pretty highly because he carried my ass in the beta a lot of the times. Bella was one of the most used characters for me in the beta. She is a really offensive debuffer character where she can remove certain buffs from the enemy, which later on comes really handy on certain elite encounters. Her ultimate does AoE damage, but the main thing is that it lowers the overall defense of all enemies for 2 turns. Her technique is also really strong because it also lowers everyone's defense right at the start of the battle for a pure 20% for 2 turns as well. Her technique and ultimate can be stacked, which can be incredibly clutch to your DPS, especially against enemies that have really high base defense. Every time I paired her with any of my single target damage dealers, they would pump up bigger numbers, so she is really good. With how much I used her and needed her, I will put her into high S tier. Okay, so Yaching, or as I like to call him, Young King, is a pure selfish single target DPS character that focuses purely on giving himself big buffs in terms of both crit chance and crit damage to completely nuke an elite boss out of existence. When it comes to pure single target damage, I think Young King has the best damage potential out of all the characters on release. Young King was one of my personal favorite characters to play, especially if you make a hyper carry theme with him as a focus and turn him into a damage nuke. S tier for me personally. Now, Gepard was actually my first 5-star in the beta, a solid tank character that gives AoE shields to the whole team with his ultimate. Also has a really strong technique that also applies shields to everyone before a fight. Both his ultimate and technique have an insane scaling with his defense. His skill is also pretty good at stalling and freezing the enemies, since it has a really high base chance of 65% to freeze, and can get even higher once you equip him with relics that have high effect hit rate. Since Gepard's whole kit has really high scaling numbers, I see him being really gear dependent, since you will want high defense and high effect hit rate on him. But because of that, he will also scale really hard into the end game. I would say he is a really solid S tier tank character, but the thing is, I didn't have any fun using him as a character. So because of that, I will put him into high A tier for now, just because of my personal preference. Okay, so Hertha. Hertha is someone we will get for free from progressing through the early stages of the game. Everyone will say that she is good at farming, but to me she fell off pretty quick because of how little damage she did overall, especially when compared to the rest of the AoE characters in the game. In the beta, I just never had any use or need for her. I want to be wrong about her because I really like her design, but unless they bring her numbers up, she's not going to see that much play from me, so I need to put her into C C tier. It's Himeko time. Himeko is pretty much our fire AoE damage DPS. The more enemies the better, since she excels at AoE damage and has follow-up attacks that proc every time you break an enemy's weakness. But because of that, she's not that great at bosses or fights that don't have multiple enemies. Himeko to me is a really well balanced character that has good multipliers on her abilities, is generally fun to play, especially when you think her around and make a good setup for her follow-up attacks. For now I want to put her into high A tier, but we'll see what the future holds for her. So Hook. Hook excels on single target boss fights, since that is what her abilities are all about. Single target fire damage. Does a good amount of damage, applies fire dots which further increase her single target damage on her other skills. She's really tanky since she's a part of destruction, so pretty much a bruiser character. To me, Hook is a solid B tier character that is simple to use and just gets the job done. Natasha is free and the only healer we have besides Bailu, so pretty mandatory to use, scales well with max HP, has decent heals and healing over time, and one big thing is that she's similar to March 7, where she has a trace later on that gives her healing skill a dispel that removes a debuff from someone. Overall a pretty good character, but mostly for now a mandatory one since we are lacking healers, and for now she will sit in A tier. I still don't know how to pronounce her name, so I will call her Gamba Girl. Free character that is an AoE quantum DPS. I will say it right now, but as soon as I got my Cella in the beta, I never used Gamba Girl again. She helped me out in the early to mid game on fights that needed quantum damage, but later I just didn't need her whatsoever, and she never felt that impactful in fights. I mean, one thing to say is she eats skill points like no other character since you are gambling on procs. I just didn't feel any impact from using her, so I will put her in C tier. Okay, so it's shampoo time. So he applies and stacks wind dots, and he increases the damage of all dots with his ultimate. Removes shields from enemies like there is no other, but overall he is a semi-DPS debuffer. Fun to play but doesn't pair well with that many characters besides maybe Whelp, but for now he's going to be in B tier. I can see him skyrocket and become more sought after when Kafka releases, since his whole kit kinda goes really well with her overall dot abilities. Time will tell how good Shampoo will really become, but for now I see him as a B tier character. Since I am someone that loves to play control and dot builds, I will put Wealth into S+ tier instantly. Now let me explain why. First of all, Wealth is the only imaginary damage dealer we have on launch. But not only that, but because he is a really fun character to both use and play. First of all, he can completely delay the actions and the speed of enemies and turn the flow of the combat into your hands, where you can straight up manipulate the combat, which is really impactful. So Wealth's main thing is imprisonment, where when an enemy gets imprisoned, their actions can be delayed up to 45% on his max level. His damage is also nothing to be laughed at. I also think that his technique is one of the most busted techniques in the whole game, where he has a 100% base chance to delay all the enemy's actions by 20% and also reduce their overall speed by 10%. Well, to me is one of the most fun characters that I had the joy to play in the beta, and a straight up monster. Because of that and more, I think Wealth deserves to be in the S+ category, because not a single character fills out the niche that Wealth brings to the combat. Serval is a pretty standard lightning AoE DPS that also focuses on applying lightning dots. Performs really good with minimal investment, not that good on bosses, but good in encounters that require an AoE lightning character. I will put her into B tier, since she is a pretty well balanced and solid pick, which we also get for free, so no complaints there. I like to call Shushank the weakness break queen. Scales really good with break effect and has an insane stackable buffs in both damage and speed. She also summons a giant cock on the enemy that has busted damage multipliers on it, and it also gives her the ability to instantly go again after using her ability. Shushank is a 4-star character that outshines most 5-star characters for now. To me, she is a high S tier character because of the damage potential and the burst she does, and the versatility when it comes to all the light cones she can use. A really solid pick for a 4-star. Ting Yun, aka Fox Girl, is an undeniable viable S+ tier character. Gives good damage buff, scales with attack, her ultimate gives a flat 50 energy to a character and provides a huge damage buff for several turns. Tingyon is the mana battery support that you want to have. She also doesn't lack in the damage department. Overall, she was a staple in a lot of my team comps, and you can see that Hoyoverse is pretty much saying that fox girls are better than cat girls, so deal with it. But yeah, she's overall a really strong mana battery character that goes well with a lot of the characters that we currently have. Now we have Physical MC and Fire MC. Physical MC to me is a really good physical bruiser and really versatile since you can choose single target damage or AoE damage when it comes to using the ultimate. Personally, I heavily invested into the MC in the beta and didn't regret it one bit, since there are a lot of fights where I got straight up carried with the damage it did. I will put Physical MC into A tier. Overall, I think that the main character is really strong in Honkai Star Rail. Next up is the Fire main character, or Preservation, or the tank equivalent. Brings so much utility to the team, provides shields to all characters, and also gives huge damage reduction. But the biggest thing is that Fire MC is the only character in this game that has an actual taunt, where it makes everyone attack him or her. Overall, really strong and a joy to play. Deserves to be an S tier. Clara to me is a speed demon, scales really well with speed, especially if you get her signature light cone, but even without that she's versatile and strong with the rest of the hunt light cones, and has really strong damage output. She's quantum, so she will see a lot of play, and every time I used her she felt really impactful. She's strong at elite fights and boss fights, farming, in general she's strong, and a solid character. Fun to use because of the way her talent works, which gives her the ability to go again when she defeats an enemy. Maybe I am biased, but to me she felt like a character that was a little bit above the rest of the S tier characters, so for now she deserves to be an S+ DPS. And last but not least is Jingwan, where he has a unique gameplay mechanic where his main thing is pumping stacks with his skill and ultimate, so that his Lightning Lord, which is a completely separate thing from him, can attack and do big bursts of damage. His gameplay to me felt really simple, where the main thing was to always use his skill and try to pump out as many ultimates as you can, so that you get more stacks for the Lightning Lord to attack that is considered also a follow-up attack. A really solid AoE lightning character, but to me he seems to be way too reliant on his signature light cone, because if you don't have that, his impact and damage falls off really hard, so he's not that versatile with the rest of the light cones. I consider him to be a high A tier maybe, but I will put him into S tier for now. But yeah, this is pretty much what I think about all the characters in Honkai Star Rail for now. As you can already see, characters that bring good support and utility are highly valuable in all stages of the game, so it will always be a good thing to invest into them. But yeah, anyways, thank you all for watching and see you all in the next video.